وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Today, inshallah, we are going to learn the sharh, the commentary of one hadith regarding the month of Safar. We are now in the month of Safar. Muharram has ended. So for the youngsters, you should know this, that when somebody translates or explains the Quran, it's called tafsir. And when somebody explains the meaning of a hadith, it's called sharh. So today, inshallah, we're going to learn the sharh, the commentary, the explanation of a hadith related to the month of Safar. And Imam Al-Azhari, rahimahullah, one of the greatest scholars in our history, he wrote that if you learn the tafsir, the commentary of one verse of the Quran, there is more reward in that than reciting the entire Quran from Alhamdulillah to An-Nas without understanding it. So you can spend 30 hours or so reading the entire Quran from Alhamdulillah to An-Nas without understanding it, and somebody can spend maybe half an hour to learn the explanation of one verse of the Quran, the tafsir, and they will get more reward than you. In a similar way, the scholars of hadith, they used to say that if you learn the commentary, the explanation of one hadith, there's more reward in that than praying nafil the entire night. So what we're doing today, inshallah, is doing this. You're going to learn the explanation of one hadith, and this will be more rewarding for you if you listen carefully than praying from Isha al-Fajr. And we need to therefore prioritize knowledge, especially in this day and age when there is so much confusion amongst Muslims themselves about certain verses of the Quran, about certain hadith, what they mean. And then there are many non-Muslims who take hadith and they attack Islam. Everybody has to be half an alim nowadays. So with regards to the month of Safar, the first thing that's quite interesting for us as scholars and students of sacred knowledge, it's always interesting to go to the dictionaries and to research the meanings of Arabic words, to give you an idea of what that action relates to. For example, the word salah, if you go to the Arabic dictionary, there are many meanings of the word salah. You understand it as praying, but one of the meanings of salah in an Arabic dictionary is to heat a stick over a fire so that you can remove the crookedness from it. So when you gently heat a stick over a fire so that you can remove the crookedness out of it, that process is called salah. So why is the prayer called salah? Because the idea is that when you pray, the crookedness from your character will inshallah start to leave you. Likewise, zakat. Zakat doesn't actually mean charity, it means to purification. The idea being that when you give zakat, then for the entire year, all the wasting and the selfishness and any haram things that you've done with that money, when you give zakat, is purifying your wealth. So likewise with the word Safar, one of the best dictionaries we have in Arabic is by a scholar called Ibn Manzur. Ibn Manzur wrote a multi-volume Arabic dictionary which is called Lisan al-Arab, the tongue of the Arabs. And you should be very proud of the fact that the Muslims were the first people in history to make dictionaries as well, centuries and centuries before the West. So Ibn Manzur, he says, what's the meaning of the word Safar after which this month is named? So he says, قَالَ بَعْضُهُمْ سُمِّيَ بِذَلِكَ لِإِسْفَارِ مَكَّةَ مِنْ أَهْلِهَا. So he says that some people have said, some scholars have said, that the word Safar, which is with a swad by the way, not with a C, he says that it means to empty something. And the word Safar, the month was called Safar because in that month, the Makkans used to empty the city. They would leave Makkah and go out to try to gather food and provisions for the upcoming winter. And then he says that another meaning of the word Safar, after which this month is named, is that it comes from the word Asfar, which means yellow in Arabic. So Asfar in Arabic means yellow. And so why was the month called Safar? Because it was the autumn month and the leaves of the trees used to turn yellow. And then the last reason he gives is that he says that سموا الشهر صفرا لأنهم كانوا يغزون فيه القبائل فيطلقونه ملقوا صفرا. So another reason is that why the Quraysh, they call the month Safar, which means to be empty, is because in the month of Safar, they would go out and start fighting against other tribes. So they would boast that we've fought against you, we've destroyed you, we have left you Sifar, we've left you with zero men, and zero wealth, we've stolen your wealth as well. So just to recap, the word Safar, it can mean yellow because the leaves would turn yellow in the Safar, which is the autumn month. Number two, it means to empty Makkah because they would go out to collect food for the upcoming winter. And thirdly, it can mean to be empty, to be defeated, because the Quraysh would go out and fight other tribes and they would boast that we've left you defeated and empty. Now, another important point here is that we should all, we are students of knowledge until the end of our lives. And if you think about Arabic, for example, Imam Shafi'i, I was telling somebody this yesterday, Imam Shafi'i, he said that لا يحيط عربيا إلا نبي. Imam Shafi'i said that, the Arabic of the Quran and Hadith, it's so vast, there's so much grammar and there are so many millions of words to learn. Imam Shafi'i said, only a Nabi, only a prophet can master the Arabic language. So I'm still a student, we are all students. The more that we learn, we realize how little we know. And I would encourage everybody here as well, that you need to be studying all the time, and you should not just rely on what scholars tell you. You should not only rely on what imams tell you, and you should never become obsessed with just one scholar as well. You should learn from different teachers. For example, I'll tell you two mistakes that I've seen when I was looking into this topic, the Arabic commentaries and so on. One scholar, he wrote that Safar means to travel. Okay, and this is not the meaning of it. It's with the swad, it's not with the sin. If it was with the sin, it would mean to travel. We have that word in Urdu as well. But the Arabic word Safar for the month is with the swad, it doesn't mean to travel. It means to be emptied of something. Okay, that's a mistake made by a scholar. Another mistake is, as we're going to learn in a bit, that the Prophet ﷺ said that the month of Safar does not have any bad luck. Get rid of this Jahil mentality. He was talking to the Arabs that in Jahiliyyah you believe that the month of Safar is cursed and it's got bad luck. There's a prominent scholar, I won't mention his name, he's passed away anyway. He said that the month of Safar is a month of suffering. And this is completely wrong. The hadith is very clear, very unambiguous. It says, La Safar, that there is no such thing as bad luck in the month of Safar. So my advice to everybody here is that you should not just rely on what you hear from scholars. You should always be studying all the time with different scholars as well. As Imam Malik said, that كُلُّ يُؤْخَذْ مِنْهُ وَيُرَدْ إِلَّا صَاحِبَ هَذَا الْمَقَامِ. Imam Malik said that everybody, we can take from them and we can reject what they say, إِلَّا صَاحِبَ هَذَا الْمَقَامِ, except for the one who is in this maqam, meaning Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Only Rasulullah is infallible, nobody else is infallible. So no scholar is infallible, no imam is infallible. These are some mistakes that have been made. If there's a clear hadith in Bukhari and Muslim which says that Safar does not have bad luck, and then somebody says that it does have bad luck, clearly they've not read that hadith, and you can't be a scholar if you haven't read Bukhari and Muslim. But anyway, that's the importance of us having to study and not just blindly following people. So the next thing that we need to know is that the month of Safar, there were many significant events that occurred in it, and we need to be learning about them and teaching our children about them as well. For example, the most significant event in the month of Safar was the Hijrah. It's the month in which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radhiyallahu anhu, interestingly, they had a non-Muslim Bedouin guide. The two of them, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, with a non-Muslim Bedouin guide, made the Hijrah, the 10-day journey towards Medina. And there are many fascinating stories in the Hijrah journey, which as parents you should be learning in this month of Safar and teaching your children. So for example, you know that when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam left his house, which was surrounded by assassins, he read the verse from Surah Yasin, وَجَعَلْنَا مِن بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ صَدًّا وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ صَدًّا فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُمْ فَهُمْ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ. So he came out of the house, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was surrounded by assassins, and he read this verse in Surah Yasin, verse number 9, which says that we have placed an invisible barrier in front of these assassins and behind them, and we have covered up their eyes so they cannot see you. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he left his house, they could not see him. And this is a good verse to learn and to read all the time, because Imam Al-Qurtubi, the Cordoban scholar, Al-Qurtubi, he writes in his tafsir about 6-7 centuries ago, he says that in Spain, he was being chased by Christian knights, Christian horsemen, and he was on foot, so he ran into the forest, and then he was out of breath, and the Christian knights were coming on their horses, and he had no way of running because he's being chased by horsemen. He started reading this verse. So, verse 9 of Surah Yasin, وَجَعَلْنَا مِن بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ صَدًّا. We have made an invisible barrier behind them and in front of them so they can't see you. And Al-Qurtubi, he says that the Christian horsemen, they came into the forest, they were literally right in front of him, and they walked past him so many times, and they did not see him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him invisible to them. So Allah saved his life through this verse. So there are many stories in the Hijrah that took place in Safar. There's the story of Ma'bad. So Ma'bad, she's the lady who, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was doing the Hijrah, he stopped at her tent. So nowadays, when you make a long journey, let's say you're going from here to Glasgow, you will stop at a service station. So they had a similar types of service stations, you could say, tents in the desert. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stopped there. And Ma'bad, we don't have time to go into it, but she wrote the most fascinating, the most beautiful description of the physical beauty of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it's probably the best amongst what all the Sahaba wrote. So that's something that you can look into and teach your children. How did she describe the physical features of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? How did she become Muslim on the Hijrah journey after seeing him for just a few moments? The other fascinating story is the story of Suraka on the Hijrah journey when he tried to chase Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to assassinate him. Every time he would come close, he would start sinking in the sand, and so he gave up. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him that in the future you will be wearing the bracelets of the Persian king when we conquer Persia. And likewise, there are many other fascinating stories of Suhaib al-Rumi. Suhaib, when he was going out of Makkah, and the Makkans, they caught him on the Hijrah journey, and he said to them that, look, if you try to kill me, some of you are going to die in the process, and I'm going to die as well. So just go back to my house in Makkah. I've hidden some treasure there. Just turn around and you can have my treasure. And the miracle was that when he reached Medina, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, Rabihat tijaratuka ya Aba Yahya. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, you've made a great profit from that deal that you've done, Abu Yahya. He knew what happened even before Suhaib al-Rumi informed him of that. And another fascinating thing about the Hijrah is that when the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when his daughter, Sayyidah Zainab radiallahu anha, when she was going from Makkah to Medina, they were leaving secretly in the month of Safar. And there was a man called Habbar ibn Aswad. He found out that Rasulullah's daughter Zainab is leaving Makkah to go to Medina. He chased after her and he threw his spear on her camel. And of course the camel was in pain and it started moving about, and Zainab fell off her camel. She fell off the camel, she injured herself, and she also suffered a miscarriage as well. She lost the baby that she was carrying in her womb. So when she reached Medina, of course Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, being an emotional father, as any of us would say, he said that anybody who catches Habbar ibn Aswad, who was responsible for my daughter's death and the death of the baby that she was carrying, anyone who catches him in the desert for what he's done to my daughter and what he's been doing to other Muslims as well, they have every right to execute him. But interestingly, a few years later, when Makkah was conquered, Habbar ran away. And then his wife wrote him a letter saying, come back to Makkah because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is forgiving everybody. So when he came very scared, very nervous towards Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he got up and he hugged him. He hugged him and he forgave him. And you know what's very interesting is that our Shaykh Muhammad Al-Azhari, who was one of the greatest scholars in the Indian subcontinent in the last century, 20th century, he died in 1998, he was from the lineage of Habbar bin Aswad. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam forgave Habbar, and then from Habbar's lineage, after he became Muslim, there have been so many scholars and so many great saints of Islam. This shows us the impact of forgiveness. So please teach your children about all the fascinating stories of Hijrah within the month of Safar, inshallah. And there are many other things which happen in Safar. Salahuddin Ayyubi passed away in the month of Safar, so try to teach your children about that as well. So just moving on then, because we're running out of time, I want to briefly touch upon the famous hadith with regards to Safar. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he learned about the superstitions and the omens, as they call them in Arabic, tasha'um, the evil omens that the Jahili Arabs believed in, this is a hadith that I wanted to share with you. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, this hadith is narrated by Bukhari and Muslim. He said sallallahu alaihi wasallam 4 things. Number 1, la adwa. Number 2, wala tuyara. Number 3, wala hama. Number 4, wala safar. So there's 4 things Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, they are completely baseless. So the first one, he said that la adwa. And adwa means the transmission of infectious diseases. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying that if you get a disease, or if your animal gets a disease, don't blame the other person, don't blame the other animals. Everything is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. if the whole of humankind try to get together to benefit you with something, and Allah does not will for them to benefit you, you will not gain that benefit. And likewise, if the entire humanity get together to try to harm you, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not will for you to be harmed, then you will not be harmed. That's what he meant by la adwa. That everything at the end of the day is from Allah, so don't blame others. And number two, he said wala tiyara. And tiyar means, the word tayr in Arabic means a bird. So the Arabs, they believed that if you saw certain birds, it was bad luck. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, this is complete nonsense. And you know that we have, some people have these kind of beliefs nowadays, or if you see a certain cat or whatever, it's a bad luck. This is complete nonsense. And thirdly, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, wala hama. Hama, it means that the Arabs, they believe that if you did not take revenge, let's say for example somebody killed your father, they believe in hama, which is that the dead body of your father, a bird would come out of it and would sit on its grave until you avenged your dead father. Or that your father's dead corpse, for example, would be infested with worms until you avenged that person who killed your father. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said this is utter nonsense, this disbelief. And finally he said, wala safar. So he said sallallahu alaihi wasallam that there is no such thing as safar, as bad luck. You can get married in Safar, you can travel in Safar, there's no such thing as bad luck in the month of Safar. Safar is not a month of suffering. In fact, in Shawwal, the Arabs also believe that any marriage that takes place in Shawwal, it was doomed to lead to divorce. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he intentionally married Sayyidah Aisha radhiyallahu anha in Shawwal to break that superstition. So just to recap what we've said, and just to finish off actually, that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after saying that they la adwa wala tuyarta wala hama wala safar, that there's no such thing as bad luck from birds, there's no such thing as somebody giving you an infectious disease if Allah does not will for it, there's no such thing as the grave of a dead person being infected with something if you don't avenge them, there's no such thing as bad luck in Safar. At the end, interestingly, look what he said sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, وَيُعْجِبُنِي الْفَعْلُ الصَّالِحِ الْكَلِمَةُ الْحَسَنَةُ. He said sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after refuting all these ideas of bad luck, he said, but I do believe in good luck, in good omens, in the good word. If you say a good word to somebody, it can have a great impact on them. So he always, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he always looked for good luck and good omens, and he encouraged good words, and he totally refuted any idea of bad luck and bad words. So I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps us to act upon what's been said. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to realize that the word safar, it means to be empty, because that's when the Arabs would travel outside Mecca, or it means yellow because that's when the autumn leaves in Mecca would turn yellow. Number two, the hijrah and many other events took place in the month of Safar. Let's learn about the fascinating stories of those and teach our children. And finally, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to get rid of all of these superstitions that the month of Safar has bad luck, inshallah.